Welcome back, everybody, to Weekly Briefing. The Trump trials have taken center stage in the news this week in New York. Adult film actress Stormy Daniels took the stand and provided very lewd testimony about an alleged extramarital affair between her and the former president. As critics claim, Daniels' testimony may have been prejudicial. Meanwhile, a federal judge indefinitely postponed President Trump's classified documents trial date in Florida. Investigative reporter Julie Kelly on the Trump win.
This set of hearings is basically Judge Cannon, in a way, to the extent that she can, putting Jack Smith, the Department of Justice, and all of these other entities, including the Biden White House, on trial to expose their collusion, their corruption. And she has always said that, she favors transparency. She understands what's at stake here. She understands the unprecedented nature of this case. And she thinks the American people are entitled to see as much as we possibly can and how the DOJ and then Jack Smith brought this case forward. So it's going to be an interesting couple of months, Daniel. There may be no trial date, but there's certainly a trial that will go on in Judge Cannon's courtroom. So
Julie Kelly there talking to our reporter, Dan Baldwin. Horace, but I wanted to go back to this trial in New York for a second because the Trump team has said that this testimony from Stormy Daniels was gratuitous. They asked for a mistrial. The judge said probably not. But I'm wondering, can this testimony come back to basically backfire on the prosecution in some way, do you suppose?
Many of us in the legal community have been watching this case, and we've been very, very disturbed at what looks like obvious reversible error. Now, here's the big picture. The big picture is, if you want to know what a show trial looks like, a trial where an individual is targeted not because of the crimes that they've committed, but because who they are, New York City is example number one of that show trial. We don't have a clear identification of what your crime is. We don't have a clear indication of who you collaborated with. We don't have testimony showing any role that you played in any particular crime. And in fact, we're charging some sort of omnibus election interference charge that we haven't ever seen before. Now, here's my broader idea of what's going on. You have 4 trials, and they're each in 3 ecosystems. 2 of them are in the federal ecosystem, 1 of them is in the Georgia legal ecosystem, and the other is in the New York. The 3 of the ones that are not, the ones that are not New York, they're in an ecosystem where the appellate or Supreme Court overview wants to follow the law. And it makes lawfare very difficult, which is why you're seeing so much stymieing of these attacks. It's only in New York where the judge, Merchant, knows he's not gonna be overruled in an interlocutory appeal. He doesn't have to worry until after the end. But there's a problem. His gag order. Overwhelmingly, people see that in the legal community that it's overly broad and unconstitutional. He runs the risk that his imposition of sanctions can get him into federal court. Put the president behind bars, he can file a habeas petition that brings him into federal court. And when you get into federal court, a lot of the questions about what's happening here no longer can just go without being unobstructed.
Lisa Horace raises a lot of points about the New York trial, which are fascinating. And there's so many trials, it's hard to keep up with them all, really. But I wanted to go back to that soundbite from Julie Kelly for a minute, because I'm wondering if she was hinting at something with this Florida judge, because is there more there in her decision to put this off? And this comes at the same time there was that filing by Jack Smith, the federal special counsel, and it came on, I believe, a Friday night. And everybody knows that you don't announce things on a Friday night without planning for it in some way. And it's usually bad news.
Yes.
In this case, there were some omissions from Jack Smith, right?
Right. Whenever you want to hide something, that's when you announce it.
Exactly.
I think there's besides for having legal experts really opine on this, and whoever I've spoken to, left, right, or center, believes that this is just an assault on our judicial system. This entire trial, all of it, is just a mockery. But what it is doing when we're talking about the news cycle and the timing of all of this is making Trump more popular. I think those who support him, those who are on the fence about it, feel like he's being attacked unjustly. They feel like the punishment does not fit the crime. They feel like this is, you know, a just taking advantage of our political and legal system in order to target a man. But they're wrong. They're wrong because their plan's not working. He's becoming more and more popular. If there should be even a harsher, judgment to come out against him, I think it'll make him even more popular. So for the Democrats, for the judge who seems like he has it in for him, if he really wants Trump to go away, he should ignore him. They shouldn't bring him to trial. They shouldn't put him on the cover of every newspaper, and they should just let this be. But in the meantime, the polls show that it's working in Trump's favor.
John, it's interesting because this has evolved and developed, and now the House Judiciary Committee, under the auspices of the chairman, Jim Jordan, has announced that it wants to investigate Jack Smith, specifically with this filing he did at Friday at the 11th hour, and particularly this idea that they, I don't want to say rearranged documents, but they apparently tampered with documents in some way, which you're not supposed to do, apparently. Is the judge in this case, Eileen Cannon, is she sort of attempting to accidentally, not on purpose, maybe assist the House Judiciary Committee's investigation by delaying this trial and by exposing some of this evidence that may be very helpful to an investigation?
Well, I don't think she's doing that on purpose. That's not her purpose behind her ruling. I mean, there are just some really bad things that were done by the prosecution, but that may have the effect because it does delay the trial, and that's the last thing. Do you see this guy, this Jack Smith, how he's really pushing at every turn? He knows this is lawfare, and he knows he has a short window to get this to happen before the election. So if he were just concerned about the facts, he'd say, hey, we need any review that we want to, however long it takes. Just we want to make sure that we go through the process. Instead, he's a guy he's got a deadline, he's got an agenda, and she's putting brakes on that agenda, and it's a good thing.
Can I say this about the boxes? Mm-hmm. Look, if you seize 9 boxes and you claim that in each one of the 9 boxes is evidence of some sort of security material, national security material, if it turns out that in 2 of the boxes there was no national security information, but you move some from some of the other boxes and put into them, or you accidentally allowed them to get shuffled, that's why this is so serious. The government is not allowed to make representations like they made in the initial indictment if it turns out that the evidence doesn't support it.
Well, I'm sure we'll be hearing more about this, probably be hearing more from Judge Cannon as well. Meantime, pro-Palestine protests rage on throughout the country, but police in Washington, D.C. cleared out one encampment at George Washington University this week after dozens marched to the home of the university president. D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser claimed she and the police made the call to clear the camp based on threats to, quote, public safety.
I want to be clear that our responses to demonstrations is always rooted in public safety and constitutional responsibility. But over the past few days, we began to see an escalation in the volatility of the protests at GW. This started last Thursday when a GW campus police officer was pushed by protesters and an item was grabbed out of the police officer's hand during the performance of her duties. On Monday, MPD learned of more indicators that the protest was becoming more volatile and less stable. This included a simple assault reported to GW police, security probing of a GW building, indicators that counter-demonstrators were covertly in the encampment, and information that protesters from other schools were traveling to GW.
So, Lisa, it's interesting. The mayor said that she wasn't going to do anything, and then suddenly public safety is the #1 issue. What do you make of that?
Why did it even take days? Why wasn't it after minutes? If there was a KKK encampment put up on these campuses across America, how many minutes would it take to shut these down? Why should it take weeks I mean, at UCLA, which is close to where I live, it's been horrific. It was over a week it took them. I mean, how many students were bullied, intimidated, beat up, not allowed to go to class, blocked from the library? You know, at GW, they actually said that the administrators should be beheaded. I mean, the threats that they make, and there should be no consequences. There will be no consequences on the other end of this.
John, is it coincidental that the mayor was scheduled to appear before a congressional committee, and then she didn't maybe want to appear, and so they cleared the encampments the day before, or the night before, the morning before she was supposed to testify?
Well, I know we only have about 30 seconds left in this segment, so we can go on for a long time. But bottom line is that there's no question that was her motivation, because to Lisa's point, she should have cracked down on day one, and she would have done that if it were a right-wing protest. So that's your answer.
Horace, what do you make of this?
Well, first I want to say the KKK has never been a right-leaning organization. Historically, they've always supported the Democrats and the left. But racism is always looked upon by this leadership as their number one thing that they want to go out after. What they don't understand is that anti-Semitism is a form of racism, and it's the kind of racism that they're prepared to ignore.
Excellent, excellent point, excellent point. Panelists, we have about a minute left. It is time for our crystal ball question. The Boy Scouts of America announced after 114 years that it will change its name to Scouting America. This is an effort to emphasize inclusivity. Panelists, I want you to gaze into your crystal ball and tell me, if you could rename an organization, what would it be? John?
Well, under President Biden, his EPA, which is the Environmental Protection Agency, it should be renamed the Electric Vehicle Profiteering Agency because of all the mandates that they're doing.
Very
Lisa?
good. That's a tough one to follow.
What's your choice?
I don't know, but you know, I do a lot of speaking at the UN, and it's got to be something about the UN, because it's definitely not united, and they're doing a lot of things that they shouldn't be doing over there.
Horace, any ideas from Texas?
Sure. I was going to rename the DNC the DSAA, the Democratic Socialist Against America.
Very good.
Fabulous choices, fabulous choices. Panelists, thank you very much. Thank you for coming. Thanks for your time. We are out of time. Thank you very much. Coming up, Andrew Harding, researcher at the Heritage Foundation, explains why politicians could be on the cusp of picking the Green New Deal over national security. You won't want to miss it.